Welcome to How to Be a Texan. How you guys doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Oh, man. I am excited. Very excited.
My ears have been completely shattered.
Yeah. Kevin just blared the
It'll probably sound fine in the podcast.
intro,
right now, this
intro
music
song,
is
but man, I'm just glad I like this song so much.
Y'all have sensitive ears or something?
I think so.
I think we just have higher quality headphones.
That is true.
That's good. All right. Well, hey, how you been, Kevin? Long time no talk to.
Great. I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah? Andrew, what about you?
I guess I'm doing fantastic too.
You just told me about
Minus the ear situation.
your distilling processes. So Andrew and Kevin have been doing some interesting projects with distilleries.
No, we made that like 3 years ago.
What?
Yeah.
That was a long time
That's
ago.
so interesting.
It's been aging this whole time.
Yeah.
You know, so like I'm all about chemistry, right? You know, I was a chemistry minor in college.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah. I think
I've told
so.
you that 28 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Well, owning a still is illegal.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we can't technically do it.
I think
Well, I don't want to encourage that.
I think you can own a still. You just can't like sell whatever you're doing. Right?
I looked into it.
Oh, you did?
Really?
Yeah, and I think
Maybe it's
there's
like a
more
certain
to it.
size or something.
I don't know. There's more to it. I need to look a little bit deeper.
Okay. Well, hey, I'm not encouraging you guys to do anything illegal.
I am encouraging it.
I just think it's cool that you guys are mixing up stuff because all my pie escapades have been fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, because that's just a chemistry project with a nice output.
Yeah.
Ever since our Thanksgiving episode, I'm on the road to
It's chemistry with weight gain.
right. So I'm put a timeout on that for that very purpose. So anyway, hey, today we're going to talk about something really nice. So it's a group of Texas legends, and this is a family group, and we're going to talk about the Bass Brothers.
Oh, the Bass Brothers.
Yeah. So this is something that we've been researching a bit. This is a very private family, and they're
Well, when you said Texas Legends, I thought it was
There will be a giant sucking sound.
Ross.
That's what I was. Yeah, I thought it was gonna be Ross Perot.
No, we've already done Ross.
Well, he is the Texas Legend.
Well-
Oh wait, we did George Strait too. He's the other Texas Legend.
We got a lot of Texas legends.
We do.
And these are 4 living Texas legends, and we're blessed to have them.
Yeah.
So, but they're interesting, provocative, and secretive. There's just a lot out there that we don't know, but I guess we just should appreciate what we do know. Mm-hmm. And so far, they've been huge advocates for Texas and, in particular, Fort Worth. Mm-hmm. And so, what I thought would how we would break this down, we would talk about kind of the family itself and some of the genealogy there. Even though we'll probably botch that a little bit, we'll talk about the power structure in Fort Worth, which I thought that's pretty interesting, just looking at generational connectivity down.
Yep.
And then we'll talk about some of the real public donations and the investments and the infrastructure that have made really Fort Worth itself into a really neat, amazing town to live in.
And before we dig deep in, just to set some context for people that may be listening that have never been to Fort Worth,
Yeah.
or people outside of Texas, it is an incredible little town.
It really is.
I mean, it's not little, it's not tiny, but compared to Dallas, it's small. But it is really nice,
Yeah.
clean, fun,
Right.
kinda hip, various different cultural areas. You can go to the stockyards and be in the Old West. You can go to Sundance and be in clubs or whatever. It's a really neat little town. So,
Right.
just putting that as a frame of reference for people as they listen to what we're talking about and how it kind of ended up being what it is.
Right. So we're spinning off of the oil boom episode. So if you guys listen to that, appreciate that. The oil boom itself was really interesting. It started off in 1901 with Spindletop.
1901 or 1910?
1901.
Okay.
1901.
I need to go back and listen to our episode.
I think that's one qualifies as one of our quote sleeper episodes.
No, that was a good one.
I even put Kevin to sleep on that one. But regardless, 1901 Spindletop, and then a lot happened as a result of the oil boom, and that happened really down around the Port Arthur Beaumont area. But then, as we described, there are oil masses all under the ground, way deep under the ground, all throughout Texas. As a result, there was one man, a man named Sid Richardson, and I'm sure we're going to come back eventually and get Sid, and we'll pick him up because
That's a whole episode by itself.
it really is.
Yeah.
Just because of the kind of the life and times of Sid Richardson, I went to Baylor, and one of the buildings I was in the entire time at Baylor, because I was a science major, there's a science building, and it's the Sid Richardson Science Building, and so I have that ingrained in my brain because he went to Baylor too, and I think like 1910 to 1912, something like that.
Yeah.
And so the Bass family originated. You're like, well, wait a minute, we're not talking about Sid Richardson. We're talking about the Bass family. And so the connection there, this is where I may botch it, so help me stay.
Well, Sid, and there's a museum in Fort Worth with the largest collection of Western art and sculptures on the planet.
Right.
And that's what Sid Richardson amassed in his later years. And so the stuff that's kind of built around, it's right in the middle of Sundance Square.
Okay.
And you got this massive collection, they've got a big vault, downstairs. And so all the kind of security around, Sundance Square that also helps with the whole area is all owned by the Bass family. And they've got a major treasure trove of, this art collection there. Kendra worked in that museum when we first got married. So
Really?
she got to know the Bass family a little bit through that connection. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, there's a lot of deep history there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's make the leap from Sid Richardson over to the Basses. And so Sid Richardson was a lifelong bachelor. And so you would think, okay, well, if he had kids, then he would, all the kids would inherit that. Well, that didn't occur. So his nephew, Perry Bass, had been his partner for a couple of decades in the, I believe, 30s and 40s, 1930s and 1940s. And so as Sid Richardson came upon his death, he bequeathed all of that, gave all that to Perry Bass. And so I think the confusion that Kevin and I were trying to figure out was that Sid Richardson's brother or his sister, and then they had Perry, and we don't really know that, so my apologies for that. But regardless, Perry Bass was the recipient of all of Sid Richardson's wealth, and you would think back in the time, it really, back in $1940, it probably wasn't that. I mean, it was a tremendous amount. It doesn't look like that much now, but then it's accreted, it's appreciated over time into, multiple, I think, $8 or $9 or $10 billion worth now, with what's happened. So
I did find the connection finally.
Okay.
So Perry's dad was a man named where did it go here? Edward.
Okay.
Edward Perry Bass was his father.
Okay.
And he was married to Ann, who was Sid Richardson's sister.
Okay.
Obviously. Yep.
So Ann Richardson. Okay, got it. Okay, so that was my
not Ann Richardson. Yeah.
Well, originally
it would have been not Ann Richards, the governor.
God, now we're really twisting.
Yeah. Ann Richardson was Sid's sister.
And she married
a man named Edward. Edward Perry Bass.
Okay.
Yep.
And then they had Perry Bass, and then Perry had 4 sons. And the 4 sons are where we're at now.
That's right.
And so we've got, so it's like I need to draw this out on a whiteboard. But regardless, so that's the connection. That's how the wealth has been amassed down to 4 brothers right now. And they live in and around Fort Worth. 3 of them, I think, live very, very close to each other. I think down in kind of that cool neighborhood in Southwest Fort Worth, and then Ed lives downtown. So
it's cool to kind of get that connection because growing up, I always heard of Sid Richardson.
Yeah,
and I always heard of the Bass family. I never quite made the connection that it was all from the same
interconnected
thing, right?
Yeah.
Until Kendra actually started working there, and she's like, So,
right.
But yeah, it's kind of interesting to make that connection because those are 2 very famous names. Like you said, entire wing at Baylor's named after Sid Richardson, right?
Well, that's right. And now that I'm working for this company, we're based in Fort Worth, so I spend all my time in Fort Worth now when I'm not traveling for work. And it's really cool. Like, for example, we had a planning retreat down at the new Dickies Arena. The new Dickies Arena is a fantastic new arena that can have concerts and basketball games and rodeos, and it's on the rodeo fairgrounds, and that's where they're doing the new Western whatever, the rodeo, couple of weeks. It's still going right now. And the Bass family was behind building that Dickies Arena.
Yep.
And it really is. It's a remarkable building.
Well, there's a Cowgirl Hall of Fame over there, too.
Okay.
And the Bass family was behind putting that over there, too. And it's right there in that same little complex where the old stock show grounds are.
Yeah.
And then Dickies is over there now, and they do the rodeos over there. And then this Cowgirl Hall of Fame is right back there.
Right.
I took Sammy there one time. She had a dance competition that went all day at Will Rogers.
Okay.
And so during one of the breaks, we went over to that Cowgirl Hall of Fame. She thought that was so cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's really cool. They've just put a lot into the cultural
Yeah.
aspects of the city. It's really cool.
Well, even that Dickies Arena, they took us on a quick little tour of the whole, even the underground. There's a whole underground area for all the cattle and horses and whatever. And then up on the stage, there's a special stage where they had, the Bass family gets to sit in this certain special area because I guess they chipped in the other half or whatever, just to get it completed, which is so cool. So anyway, back to the genealogy. So we've got the four brothers. So Perry being the dad, and then the four brothers. So you have Sid Bass, Ed Bass, Robert Bass, and Lee Bass. So Sid, born in 42, ended up going to Yale and Stanford, was a big investor in Disney for a long time. And then Ed is probably he is by far the most known about Bass brother because he's just kind of more public. All four brothers are just, I think they keep to themselves, and they have a lot of business interests, but they don't really seek the spotlight at all. Is that a good way to say that?
I would say that's definitely true.
Yeah.
And their mom set a great example. So Nancy Lee Bass is known, she's not alive anymore. She died in 2013, but she was known as the First Lady of Fort Worth.
Right.
So she set the example for them. She's the one that donated to Fort Worth Museum of Science and History, which is also really cool, right over there in that same area.
Right.
That Cowgirl Hall of Fame that we talked about. She was also very deeply involved in setting up the Performance Hall, Bass Performance Hall, and worked with Van Cliburn to set that up and name it after her husband.
Right.
So she was kind of just known as the First Lady of Fort Worth, as philanthropist, very classy lady, and really set the example,
right.
For those boys to, kind of continue that on. So,
well, I think that goes with all this. That Bass Performance Hall, I don't know if you've been in there. Have you seen anything in there?
I've not seen anything there. No.
So Amy and I got tickets to the season the first several years it was open, and whatever show came through, we just went and saw the acoustics in that building, and that helps to say that Van Cliburn was involved because the acoustics in that building are unbelievable. Now, I know that Windspear Dallas Opera House, now they've opened up over in Dallas. I think it's the AT&T Windspear. It's amazing, too, but I think those two in DFW, North Texas, are probably just, they're unbelievable.
Well, I think we said on the Van Cliburn episode that that Bass Performance Hall is where they have his national thing or global thing now, right?
Which is coming up. I think the tryouts basically are this year, and then the judging is next year.
Yeah.
So cool. So anyway, keep going. So Sid being the eldest, so this is Sid Bass, born in 1942. Then Ed Bass, the one that we see more than the others, who lives downtown Fort Worth. He was born in 1945. Just got married in late 18. So he'd been a perennial bachelor, and then at 72 he gets married, which is great. So
hope he signed a prenup.
So that's exciting, and we'll come back to Ed and talk about some of his his philosophies on investment in the community and why he wanted to create a vibrant downtown, which is really, really cool. And then we go to the third son, and that's Robert Bass, and he was born in 1948. He's been real active with the state of Texas. He went to Yale. He's sat on the Texas Parks and Highway Commission. And then we get to Lee, who was born in 1956. He really veered off a little bit, looks like, in his business career and ventured out into the aviation industry, did a bunch of things, maybe in California, and then I believe he's back now as well. So those are the four Bass brothers. And again, really the only one that we see in the kind of the public light a lot, or at least that I know of, is Ed. because he lives downtown, and I think he's just available.
People know his name, right? Yeah. I don't know that I've seen him a lot in the public light, right? When I watched the YouTube video, I think that was the first time I'd actually seen his face.
Yeah. Right.
So they're all very private.
I think so.
But the name is just known,
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. So, and then they say, the Forbes list. So if you look at the Forbes list of the wealthiest people on the planet, they're always on there. And they say that each of the Bass brothers is worth just over $3 billion apiece. But I think who knows? It could be $3 billion, it could be $100 billion. Who knows? With the oil reserves, the investments they've done, all that. Who knows? But regardless, they've amassed a lot, and good for them. So, okay, so that's the genealogy and kind of the history of the actual family, and that's about all. That's about all I know. I'm not running buddies with them. They seem like wonderful people, but I don't go play golf with them or anything. Or
why not? That's rude.
Go to Buc-ee's together, drink some coffee.
You don't hang out at Dickey's Arena with them?
Well, I didn't see them. We were there for 3 days, and it was awesome, but I didn't see any basses there. So, okay. So then I thought we'd flip over and talk to kind of the history of the power structure in Fort Worth, because to me, that's pretty interesting. Is that interesting to you, or is it nap time?
No, it's not nap time at all.
It's interesting to me.
Okay, Andrew. If I've got Andrew, I'm good. Okay, so there's this article in D Magazine, and it was produced, I don't know, a long time ago. Crap, when was that? This was in November 1995. Do you remember all the way back to November 1995?
I do.
Wasn't that long ago for you and me? It feels like it was.
That was 1 year before I was born.
Yeah. Oh, that was a fine year. Just ultimate freedom for you and Kendra, just frolicking around with no kids.
History doesn't begin until April 26th, 1996.
Amen to that. But anyway, there's this D Magazine article that says, "Who runs Fort Worth?" And it's a great article that just talks about what happened with the early settlers in the 1850s through the 1900s, and then them passing that intentionally down to the next set of families for the next 40, 50 years, and then the next generation of families that have picked that up and then really advanced that cause. I just don't know of any other city, as I'm sure way more cities around the U.S. have this kind of genealogy than what I know of, like New York or L.A. or whatever, Vegas maybe, where you have families that really control the development of a city and then just hand it down to the next hand-picked.
There's always an inner circle.
Yeah.
Whether it's cities, whether it's businesses, whatever. The best advice, my first real job that I ever had, I went to this trade show, and it was in the... I can't remember if it was a healthcare industry. It was an industry-specific trade show I was at, right? And the president of our company, who was an older gentleman, I was just, 20-year-old, 22-year-old kid. He pulls me aside. We're at this networking event, and he pulls me aside, and he says, "Kevin, at every event like this, there's an inner circle." And he said, that lady, and that man, they control this entire thing.
Oh, wow.
And it was the best, and he was absolutely spot on, right? And so he was hanging out with them while all the other people were mucking around. And anyway, I've always found that to be true in any situation. So I think every city has it. I think we're fortunate with this in that, these are all really good people, right? It's not like, these are gangs of mafia insiders that are, these are good human beings, right? And I think Fort Worth reflects that. You know,
it'd be interesting to do kind of a similar study on the other big cities of Texas. Has there been the same with Austin, Houston, San Antonio? Has there been the same kind of, and then Dallas is, even though people think of DFW, well, they think of Dallas first, not Fort Worth. And as you said, if you guys haven't ever been to Fort Worth, and tell the little aside that we were the top show, one of the top shows in Germany. How cool is that?
Yeah.
I bet a lot of our German friends haven't been to Fort Worth.
Probably not. No.
Did I ever tell you the only German that I learned in my life?
No.
You know what it is?
What?
So my sister was I'll get back to the episode in just a second, but my sister was the president of the German club in high school. And on the back of their shirts, I took Spanish. I'm a Texas guy. Everybody needs to know how to speak Spanish, is my opinion here, because everybody speaks Spanish here. Anyway, but my sister, she was the president of the German club. On the back of their T-shirts, they had this phrase that said, "Ich habe keine Lust."
Yeah.
You know what that means?
No.
So that's the only phrase I know.
Sounds like you're hawking up a loogie.
Ich habe keine Lust. Hey, don't speak poorly of our German brethren.
No, I'm speaking,
Ich habe keine Lust.
speaking poorly of your speech.
Well, I didn't say I was German.
I think you have to say it with more aggression, and it'll sound more German.
Ich habe keine Lust.
There you go.
So that means I don't feel like it.
Okay.
So that's all I know how to say in German. But if you can ask me any question, and I would generally say, "Ich habe keine Lust."
Is it ich? Or is
Ich. No.
Ich.
Ich.
God, no, that's talking Olivia. But it's an appropriate response. So if you ever learn that, then, if somebody says, "Hey, will you mind going to clean the bathroom?" You just say, "Ich habe keine Lust."
I'm gonna work on that so I can use it on this podcast.
Isn't the area around Reunion Tower? Wasn't that a German settlement back in the day?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm pretty
That's
sure
a good.
it was.
It may have been.
I don't know why I know that information.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it was.
That's
Yeah.
good information.
But yeah, that's a good research project to go do, and maybe have a follow-up episode, a couple of episodes on.
Yeah, the
the
families,
inner circles.
Yeah, the inner circles of the big
families
cities.
Mhm.
Yeah, and how that's evolved over time.
Yep.
Because
Very
you think, okay, well, does the mayor and the city council, do they just dictate everything?
Nah.
Maybe.
Nah.
I don't know, but probably not.
Nah.
Yeah, so it seems like right now this is pretty clear. So let me just read this little excerpt out of this D Magazine article back in '95. And it said, to understand why this matters, it helps to have some history. Fort Worth used to be run by a group of men called the 7th Street Gang. These were, and you'll know all these names, Amon Carter, Sid Richardson, and then a bunch of randoms, the big bankers, the utility company heads, and a few select CEOs, most of whom had offices on 7th Street. The history of the 7th Street Gang is the story of the men who started Fort Worth, the Terrells, the Daggetts, the Van Zants, and such, who came as bold young men in the late 1850s ready to take on the frontier. So remember, all of our crap that we've talked about in the settling of Texas was around the 1850s, 1860s. And so Fort Worth was this cowboy town, this frontier town.
It was a fort.
It was a fort.
It was a military fort for a while.
Worth.
Right.
Right.
It was a blanket fort.
That we really developed around it back in the 1850s. And these families, the Terrells, the Daggetts, the Van Zants, and others, started that. That was the first generation of families. Then they handed it off to Amon Carter, Sid Richardson, that group in the early 1900s. And then now we have the Basses and we have others that are there with that 7th Street Gang now, which is so cool.
It's really cool.
Because they care about, and throughout, this is a long article, but it's fantastic in that it says they wanted to make sure that it was secure, it was safe, it was economically healthy, and that it was a nice place to live, but it had prosperity at its core and a nice family balance so you could be free and safe and secure inside the town.
Yeah. So I grew up in Arlington, which was, Arlington, for those that are not from around here, is pretty much halfway in between Dallas and Fort Worth.
Yeah.
And growing up, we always did things in Fort Worth. It didn't really do a whole lot in Dallas. But we would, as a kid, we would always go to the Fort Worth Zoo because it had an amazing zoo.
It's a great zoo.
We would go to the Museum of Science and History, great little museum. We would go to the stock show over there. So there's always these cultural things or stockyards and the rodeo. So that's always kind of been a part of it, right? And I think, and I'm sure you're going to get to it, but, the impact that Ed has been to revitalize an entire new section of it that hadn't been built out even when we were kids, right?
Right.
And my parents owned a deli in downtown Fort Worth on 6th and Houston in the mid to late 80s. Went over there all the time. And it was a nice, clean area, no crime or anything, but it was all business. And at about 5 o'clock, everything would shut down and everybody was out of the city.
Right.
There was no place to go. And then in the 90s is when, Ed Bass specifically kind of revitalized the whole Sundance Square area.
Right.
Which back when we were working down there, that was nothing. There was a couple of coffee shops, and that was about it. So it's just really cool to see over the generations even how, their mom was kind of building out the zoo and the museums, all that kind of stuff, and now Ed has built out this whole other section. It's just really kind of interesting to piece that all together.
Well, let's get into that. And that's our final section, and then we'll close it out. But just the good that the Bass family has done, and they've done some stuff over in Dallas too. I don't want to take that away. And then for the greater good of all of Texas. But their primary work has been in Fort Worth. And on the Trinity Rail, all the Trinity Trails, they've invested in that. They've invested in the zoo. They've invested in...
now that's a great point, because now along the Trinity they're converting all these old warehouses into lofts now, and people are moving in and living there. It's just cool. It's just kind of like they keep going from one section to the next.
Right. So that's my question: is how do you get families like this? And maybe it's just money, but how do you get families like this that want to invest to make it a good, great place to live downtown? Because the knock on Dallas, and I've worked in downtown Dallas for the majority of my career, is you go down there and you work, and there's plenty of places to go during the day, but as soon as the workday ends at 5 or 6, everybody goes back home to the suburbs, and downtown Dallas is a scary, frightening place to be at night. Now, there's been a lot of regeneration with Uptown and some of the older parts that have kind of regentrified a bit, but it's still not great.
Kind of around the American Airlines Center now is pretty cool.
Yeah, no,
but it's still
there's some areas that are picking back up, but if you go down Main Street at night, it's still frightening. I mean, there may be a couple of bars that are cool to go to.
Yeah, well, there's just nobody down there. Everybody gets out of there.
That's right. That's right. And what Ed wanted to do was to say, I want to live downtown, so how can I invest with others and basically knock down old crap buildings so that we can build something up, so that there's some vitality, so there's shopping, there's places to eat within walking distance, there's a safe, secure feeling and all that, and there's cool condos or apartments that I can rent above all that, and then I can just go down to the elevator and walk around. And that's exactly what's happened. Sundance Square is cool. It's very electric, and there's a lot of energy around it. And so now, is it the same as downtown Chicago or New York? No, it's not like New York, because when you and I went, it's like we could go out at 3 a.m., walk around, have a blast. We could go to a billion different places, and it was just such energy, whatever. Same thing downtown Chicago. You go, you walk all around. There's a very walking kind of, you can live, you should live there, you should work there, and you should stay and play there. Fort Worth is not quite fully there, but that's the intention, which is cool, because Dallas, there's
Dallas is not that at all.
There's plenty of places, and we've been saying that for 50 years. That back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, sure, you could live in downtown Dallas because it was cool. Nobody else could, because you couldn't get your jalopy out to, Frisco.
Yeah.
Frisco was dove hunting, and
Anyway. Right, exactly. Well, this article that we were going through on the 7th Street, this was done in 95, right? This was written right in the heyday of when Ed Bass was revitalizing and building up the entire Sundance Square as we know it, right? And I was working in Fort Worth during that era, doing consulting. I would drive over there every day, doing consulting. Literally one morning, and this was in 96 because it was during the election year. Literally one morning I get to work and somebody says, "Hey, Bill Clinton's going to be speaking." I guess I was just kind of out of it. It's like, no, I didn't even know. He's talking in Sundance Square. He's running for re-election, and he's here because he wanted to highlight, how the things that he had done for the economy were trickling into, all kinds of places all across the U.S. And so he wanted to highlight what was going on in Sundance Square and, of course, take credit for it as a politician, right? And for those of you that haven't been to Sundance Square, there's this one area kind of in the middle. It's basically a big, parking lot area. But on the side of one of the buildings is this big mural. It looks like an old Western-style mural with, like, Longhorn and stuff like that. So Clinton set up his speech stage right in front of that. It was just a great visual. But this is back in the 90s. So we were literally able to walk from our office building at lunch, walk over, go through a metal detector, and we saw Bill Clinton, the president of the United States, give a speech.
Wow.
And it was amazing. Yeah.
That's cool.
And whether you like Clinton or not, he was a fantastic speaker.
Yeah, and I was not a Clinton fan at all, but he was an amazing speaker.
Yeah.
And it was such a cool experience. And I remember looking up the top of the buildings, and I could see, security up on top of the buildings with
sniper rifles and all that.
Yeah, it was all going on.
Wow.
This was pre 9/11 too,
Yeah,
so
no
imagine
kidding.
what it would be like today.
No kidding.
But anyway, so it was just really cool and just kind of showcasing what the Bass family had done for Fort Worth, and just was a great case study. It was really, really cool.
No, that is cool. I thought it'd be fun for you to hear from Ed Bass himself. Kevin's pulled a couple of clips from a speech that he gave. And the point of that I want you to hear is just his commitment to two things. And it's almost like Ed invented the Joy of Life predictor before I did. You remember my Joy of Life calculator?
And sustainability.
Yeah. So, see, I think Ed's way ahead of me.
He's way ahead.
Clearly. Way ahead of me. So, anyway, but I think Ed and I'd be pals because of my Joy of Life, calculator and this. Anyway, in this speech, I want you to hear him talk about the quality of life and the investment in public utilities that's required to have that balance.
Okay, let me play this first one here.
It's our responsibility, I would say. There's a thing called intergenerational neutrality. And basically what that means, what I do is not taken away from what the next generations will get, but what I do gives enough to my generation that I'm not just slaving away and getting nothing in order to provide for the future generations. And that's what makes a great city. We wouldn't have a great spirit if we were slaving away thinking, we got to make things good in 40 years, but now we can skimp.
Yeah, can't skimp right now.
No, that's great. You get to reap the benefits of what you do now, and then your next generation is going to also see value in what you did and invested in.
Right.
That's fantastic.
And that's where I think, like I said earlier, I think their mom set an example of that for them. Mm-hmm. The things that she did, they're now building on, which is really cool.
Right. I wish we had more families like the Basses. Man, what a blessing to Fort Worth. I just wish we had a family like the Basses for Detroit or wherever that desperately needs this kind of thinking to invest in the infrastructure so that there's quality of life now and for generations to come.
Yep. I like this clip too.
Now, one thing that you encounter in this world today, and this is something always been around, but I think has come to more prominence. You encounter what I'm going to call the tax naysayers. Okay? There are always a certain number of people, there always have been, always will, who think that there is virtue in not having to pay taxes. There are people in this city that think that keeping up the streets, picking up the garbage, delivering the water, keeping the peace and putting out fires is all we need to pay for. Well, and that's what I'm calling tax naysayers. Say there shouldn't be taxes, there shouldn't be government. Though at the same time, many tax naysayers may use our public facilities and our services very liberally. Somehow they just don't think it's fair for them to have to pay for it. Now, you are intelligent men and women. You're professionals. You're in the most exciting parts of your lives and your careers. You're working hard to improve things for your family and so forth because you know that you get what you pay for. You know your hard work and your drive lead to success. So you are paying for your homes, your cars, you're paying for education for your kids, though it may be through a public system. You're paying for your entertainment. You know you get what you pay for, and what you pay for gives you a better quality of life. So if you think in the bigger scale of our city and the longer term of your kids' generation and your grandkids' generation, it's up to us to be making capital investments.
You know, and I think a lot of that goes back to what I said earlier. You know, I mean, these are good human beings, right? These are good people. Well, you know, I think a lot of the people that are tax naysayers, and I've been that as well, is when the taxes are not used appropriately, right? When there's fraud, waste, abuse.
That's right.
But, you know, for a program like this, with a family like this that's responsible, that says, you know, and you can actually see the benefits of the investment, happy to pay taxes to Fort Worth. I don't live in Fort Worth. Right. You know, I would donate to that type of a cause, right? So I think he's really onto something with both of those clips, right? You know, setting it up for the future generations, and then also, you know, investing appropriately. And everybody should be chipping in to do that, you know, because everybody can get value out of that, you know, for their community, right?
There's a lot of wisdom in those words, but there's a lot of issues in there too. So he hit on that second clip. He hit on so many things that could be hotly debated. And you get into the kind of the spirit of entitlement. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I deserve to have those amenities, those things, because, you know, I'm here, so I deserve it. I'm entitled to it. No, you're not at all. And so there's just a lot of different facets of what he just said there that, you know, you could almost spend an hour just kind of unpacking the different concepts. And I thought it was fantastic. It's very wise.
Yeah, it is very wise.
Yeah, and so I appreciate that. Okay, well, hey, let's wrap up. We've been talking a long time, but I thought this family is somebody that I consider. Sid Richardson, certainly a Texas legend. The mom and dad, absolutely Texas legends, but really wanted to honor the four Bass brothers here in this episode and just talk through some of that and just call them out.
Yeah, no, I agree. This was awesome.
Yeah, good stuff. So, hey, appreciate you guys listening to us on the Bass Brothers, and we'll be talking to you guys soon.
Look us up on iTunes, Spreaker, Google Play, Spotify. We're all over the world, all over the place now. Especially
in Germany and Iceland, right?
Yeah, we did. We hit like number 5 on the travel charts in Germany.
Yeah.
Like we peaked at that.
So
and then we dropped. I got a notification when we were at number 20. And I guess I'd been ignoring the notifications. I was like, wow, we're at 20. I looked, and it was like we had peaked at 5. And I was like, wow. Interesting stuff. So anyway, look us up. Give us a review. Love you, Germany.
Do you want me to go ahead and translate this whole episode in German?
That's what we agreed to.
That would be problematic. Ich habe keine Lust.
That's the only thing you know.
I don't feel like it.
I don't even know if that's really German.
I promise it is. They'll tell us. All right. Thank y'all.
Adios. Bye.